Hi, everybody, and welcome to Introduction to Blockchain. This course is designed to provide you with a foundational background and understanding of the emerging technology called blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and further to spark your interest in the biggest technology since the internet. I'm George Levy, and I will be your instructor. Thank you very much for attending. I want to make you aware that Introduction to Blockchain is the first of a series of 6 courses that form the Blockchain Certificate Program powered by BlockCDU and credentialed by Foundational Technologies Institute. Today's class is actually based on the contents of the first of the 6 courses, Introduction to Blockchain. For being here, I want to make you aware that you have the opportunity to receive a free downloadable bonus. All I really want to request from you is that you actually answer a very simple question. How many different cryptocurrencies do you own? You will find on the side of your screen, you'll have the opportunity to let us know how many different cryptocurrencies you own. I want to understand exactly what your take is, if you own any cryptocurrencies. If you have just one, for example, Bitcoin, or you might have Ether, just say one. If you have 2 or more, then start choosing and putting different contexts. I want to understand who the audience is, as it will let me better gauge which type of content I should focus on as I present this to you. So I'm going to give this just a few more seconds to actually get some responses. So far, I've gotten a few responses, and they vary. And I will be sharing these with you shortly as soon as I get some more responses in place. So I will now close this poll. And just so you will be able to understand right now, as it currently stands, I understand here that 50% of you have no cryptocurrencies whatsoever. We have some people that have 2 to 4, and even have somebody with 5 to 10. As we go through this course, I'll be talking to you about cryptocurrencies, and you can understand then exactly how cryptocurrencies tie into blockchain. But it's very good for me to understand who the makeup of the audience is to know how much in depth I should go. So for today's course, let me tell you about the contents of what we're going to be covering today. We will begin with where are the blockchain jobs? The blockchain space has opened up many job opportunities, and I will be talking to you exactly areas where there are some great opportunities being made in this fast-growing new technology. We will then follow that with the origin of blockchain. It's important for you to understand where blockchain came from. It's a big buzzword right now to talk about blockchain, but where did it come from? In that section, we'll focus on that specific area. We'll then get deep into all about blockchain. My objective in this specific section will be for you to understand what blockchain is, why it's relevant, and why people have such a big buzz around it. This section will be all about blockchain, and I'll be covering that. From there, I will dive into cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a key area of where blockchain is being used, and in that section, I will dive into that. These contents will form the agenda of what I will be presenting to you today. So let's get this course started by talking about where the blockchain jobs are. First thing I want to point out to you is that blockchain has been listed as the #1 job skill for the year 2020, according to LinkedIn. There's an article at the link that I've posted for you below, which talks more in depth. But according to LinkedIn, the most in-demand job skill for employers that are looking for people to bring on board is blockchain. So it's very important for you to understand how relevant this is. So as you're actually looking at job opportunities, understand that blockchain, not only is it the most in-demand job skill, but it is also across industries. People used to think that blockchain only focused on the financial industry. That is not the case. And as you'll see in this section, blockchain has stemmed far beyond merely the financial area. And the big problem is there's a lack of skilled talent. There's a lot of job positions open, but there's simply not enough people that know how to use blockchain technology. So let me tell you an example of some of the people that are actually hiring right now. So some of the companies that are hiring are actually startups. To be specific, there have been over $3.7 billion raised by over 1,500 different cryptocurrency startups. Now, these $3.7 billion have been raised not as dollars. They've been raised through a mechanism called initial coin offerings. Now, the initial coin offering method of raising funds is a new type of funding mechanism that has been created thanks to cryptocurrencies and blockchain. This is in addition to what used to be like initial public offerings or other ways of raising funds. This is a brand new mechanism, which has been made possible by blockchain technology. And all of these cryptocurrency startups have raised $3.7 billion just in the USA and are looking for people to hire. Beyond that, ICOs, which I mentioned, are a new way of raising funds. These are new ways that new companies are bringing in even more funding. So new jobs are being created as we speak. Many of the companies that are already established, that is not just startups, are looking for people in the blockchain space. As you will see, the financial industry is heavily investing and heavily hiring in the blockchain space. Healthcare is another area that has been very, very aggressive in hiring. You will find that blockchain technology is being applied to many different areas, such as keeping medical records. It's actually being used extensively throughout the coronavirus pandemic. Going through logistics, blockchain is one of the key technologies being used in supply chain management, and logistic companies are applying blockchain technology across the entire platform. So they are currently looking for many people that have these skills in blockchain, but as I mentioned, there's a shortage of them. So there's a huge opportunity for people that know blockchain because there are jobs in that space. The retail industry as well. Going beyond that, technology companies are heavily investing in blockchain technology. Microsoft has one of the biggest rosters of job positions available, looking for people to actually bring on board that know about blockchain technology. You will understand as you go through this course that blockchain technology enables a different way of handling digital assets. And this concept of being able to take a digital asset and add value to it makes technology companies very interested in that space. Other companies that are aggressively hiring are IBM. IBM is one of the primary hiring companies out there with over 1,000 jobs currently looking for people in the blockchain space. Google is also aggressively hiring, and these are just a few of the technology companies that are hiring. So to go beyond that, to give you an expression, Amazon has also aggressively started hiring in the blockchain space. And one of the main areas where they're involved in is in the whole supply chain. Amazon, as you know, being in the entire e-commerce space, being able to carefully track where every single one of the assets is on the blockchain, on the supply chain, requires them to use blockchain technology, and they are heavily investing in that space. So let's go on beyond other opportunities. Government is definitely one of the primary areas that is very, very strongly hiring in blockchain. To give you an example, the Department of Homeland Security has a blockchain portfolio. In fact, when you go into it, as they describe it, blockchain and distributed ledgers are innovative technologies that have many uses and applications across multiple sectors of the economy. As I mentioned, when we're looking at the coronavirus outbreak, the Department of Homeland Security has named blockchain managers among critical infrastructure workers. Think about the importance of requiring that a blockchain manager who's controlling all of the agriculture and dealing with pharmaceuticals and actually seeing all these supply chains, how important, how essential they are to the industry. So this is just an idea, just so you get the importance of where blockchain is fitting into the current hiring environment. One thing I want to make you aware is that the system gives you the opportunity to be able to ask questions. So if you wish, you could post some questions inside the chat box and let me know if along the way, if you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer those. So going through the presentation again, I want to give you an idea right now, and these are live numbers. LinkedIn blockchain jobs just in the USA has 1,427 jobs listed. Glassdoor, which is another job site, has 1,971 jobs. That's just in the United States of America. If you're actually in the Introduction to Blockchain part of the Blockchain Certificate Program, these links directly are included inside the course. And there are other opportunities for you to be able to find jobs in the blockchain space. All of this, what I want to point out to you is that this new technology called blockchain is right now in a very aggressive ramp-up phase. And there's a very big need for people who know how to really work with blockchain technology. So going through, I want to talk to you about the origin of blockchain, because I've talked to you about blockchain technology, but let's first say, what is this blockchain technology? And to get to what blockchain is, I want to take you back to the financial crisis of 2008, when the entire global markets went down, the stock market crashed. And Major banks were actually folding, companies were basically going bankrupt. From the entire depth of this, a white paper was published on October 31st, 2008, called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That document was written by someone named Satoshi Nakamoto and pointed out the vision of what Bitcoin would be. Shortly after this white paper was published, on January 3rd, 2009, the Genesis block, that is the first block in the Bitcoin blockchain, was created and Bitcoin was born. Bitcoin is where blockchain came from. One thing that you need to understand is that inside the peer-to-peer electronic cash system white paper, the term blockchain is not used. The term blockchain was actually mentioned later. What is explained, though, is that this distributed ledger, that is the Bitcoin blockchain, consists of a chain of blocks. And this is where the concept of blockchain came from. So let me give you a little bit of background of why Bitcoin was created. Bitcoin is essentially digital money, and there were previous attempts. These previous attempts at making digital money started with somebody named Wei Dai, who in 1998 published a white paper called B Money. Even back then, his vision was to create an anonymous electronic cash, which would be money that would be impossible to regulate. The vision of Wei Dai was to be able to move money away from the control of regulators like banks and different governments that could control how money moves around. That was the vision for B Money. But B Money was not able to successfully achieve mass adoption. It had some flaws, and it eventually was scrapped out. It didn't succeed. That was followed by Nick Szabo, who created something called BitGold. BitGold is very, very similar to what today is Bitcoin, and some people actually believe that Nick Szabo may be Satoshi Nakamoto. But the fact is, BitGold was not able to achieve full digital money, and it did not reach the vision that Bitcoin did. Electronic money was never successfully achieved until Bitcoin came about, with that white paper I spoke to you about, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So let me give you a little bit more background of blockchain and how blockchain enabled Bitcoin to come to life. So when we talk about why blockchain matters, there's something very important, which is called the double spend problem. And this has to do with digital assets. And blockchain actually eliminates that double spend problem. And the way that's done is, let me explain to you exactly what the double spend problem is. Let's say you're a photographer and you take a digital picture. You take a photo that you really, really like, and you email that photo to someone else. You would think that that is what you did. You emailed the photo to someone else. But that's not what really happened. You actually have two photos now. The photo that you sent by email and the one that's original in your computer. That is the problem with digital assets. A digital asset cannot be unique, because once you take a digital asset and you email it to someone else, you still keep the original in your computer. Now, with a photo, it's not as problematic, but if you take a picture of money, you could just copy and paste money. That's why you can't simply just take a digital asset that represents money, attach it to an email and send it to someone else. To put things in context, this is one of the primary reasons why the music industry actually went through the crisis that it did. Because the moment that you could take a song, convert it into an MP3, and just create unlimited copies, which you could share around the world, that song is no longer valuable. Why would you buy a song if you can get it for free? So you could not take money and create it into a digital asset that you could just email to someone else, because that automatically loses its value. Blockchain and the way that Bitcoin implements blockchain made a way around this and solved this double spend problem. So if you look inside the Bitcoin white paper, the vision that Satoshi Nakamoto portrayed was a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Blockchain and the way that blockchain uses peer-to-peer transfer of Bitcoins enables people to take a Bitcoin. If I send it directly peer-to-peer to another party, I no longer have that Bitcoin. That Bitcoin is now in someone else. Bitcoin was able to do that using blockchain technology. Now, if you really think of the reason why we have banks, why we have credit cards, why we have things like PayPal to be able to send money, is because they fix that issue of the double spend problem using their centralized platforms. But in the case of Bitcoin, this is all done peer-to-peer by using blockchain technology. So I mentioned that blockchain helps solve the double spend problem. I'm now going to take you to one of the key areas that was actually described inside the Introduction to Blockchain Certificate course. And that is areas where blockchain is best suited. Now, blockchain is best suited for places that have what fulfills this four-letter acronym, FITS. The first one is, if you have a scenario where there is a lot of fraud, blockchain is a very good technology to apply. Another one would be where you have intermediaries. So a perfect example would be like sending money to someone else, or land registry titles, where you have to rely on a centralized entity to keep registries in place. So blockchain has a good solution for that. Another one is high throughput areas. When you're dealing with intermediaries, and especially multiple intermediaries also add time, and you have to wait to go through these different intermediaries to be able to process the processing of the individual transfers. When you implement the blockchain, everybody has the same information at once. So just to put things in context, when you send money via a wire transfer to someone else, you're having to deal with one bank communicating with another bank. As a result, you have to wait between 24 hours or sometimes up to 5 days or more to be able to do a wire transfer. In Bitcoin, you can do a Bitcoin transfer and it can be confirmed in a matter of minutes. So being able to do this high throughput is a very good area suitable for blockchain technology. And the final one is when you're having to deal with stable data. And by stable data, what we're talking about is data that needs to remain the same way and does not regularly change. So for example, a land registry will have to remain assigned to a specific owner for a certain period of time. It doesn't normally change. It doesn't normally get modified. So stable data is a very, very good use of blockchain technology. Some of the industry that blockchain will change involve banking and payments. I spoke about the fact that right now banks are aggressively hiring blockchain people to be able to fill in a lot of different needs. Cybersecurity is another area where blockchain is extensively being used. Supply chain management, as I mentioned, is one of the primary areas where right now blockchain people are being hired. I mentioned that blockchain managers are essential critical infrastructure workers, according to the Department of Homeland Security. But beyond that, companies of all types are hiring blockchain managers to be able to manage their supply chains. Forecasting is another area where blockchain is being implemented. Network and the Internet of Things. These are two areas when you think about technologies. The Internet of Things relies on different digital assets moving around. If every single item that you have in your house is connected to the Internet, you have to keep an identity for each one of those assets. By having blockchain technology, you can know and lock exactly each one of these assets that are being connected across the Internet of Things. The insurance industry is also using blockchain. Private transport and ride sharing is also an area that's using blockchain. Cloud storage, charities being used. Let's go on. Government systems, electronic voting, public benefits. The healthcare industry, as I mentioned, is aggressively hiring blockchain personnel. Energy management. We're moving beyond that. Online music. I talked about the fact that the music industry went already through being completely disrupted by the creation of MP3s. But if you can actually create a song or a piece of music as a digital asset, and if I actually transfer that asset to someone else, I no longer have it, all of a sudden a song regains its value. Because of this, blockchain has been considered by many as the Internet of Value. So this is another key area where the industries are being disrupted by blockchain. The retail industry is hiring aggressively, real estate, crowdfunding. And at this point, I want to give you just a taste so you see how Bitcoin is being used around the world. So at this moment, I'm actually going to be taking you to a system that will actually let us look at real-time Bitcoin transactions happening all around the world. What you see right now in your screen is a live monitor looking at every single transaction that's currently taking place in the Bitcoin blockchain. So as people do Bitcoin transactions around the world, each one of those transactions is publicly available and recorded on a blockchain. So this is actually a site that you could see at blocks.wizb.it. You can freely see this right now, but I want you to just take a look at all the different locations where transactions are happening all around the world. You have places from Santa Clara and Phoenix going to Denver to Frankfurt. So Amsterdam, you'll see that it's a global movement of thousands and thousands of transactions. In fact, on a daily basis, billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin change hands. So I just want to give you an idea of how massive the move for this technology is right now. As I mentioned, if you have any questions as I go through, please feel free to use the chat box. To require though, I want to make sure that I'm able to answer any of the questions that you have. So as we kick off the section about blockchain, I want to respond to one of the questions that I received from a student, which was specifically, does blockchain technology need Bitcoin to work? And that's an excellent question. That's actually one of the main misconceptions that people have. In fact, many people believe that Bitcoin and blockchain are one and the same. And the fact is that blockchain technology is just one of the technologies that's used in Bitcoin. Bitcoin actually uses multiple technologies, among them peer-to-peer transfers, and blockchain happens to be one of the technologies used in Bitcoin. So they are not the same. That being said, there are different types of blockchains, and as you will see when I continue with this section, you'll realize that Bitcoin is just one application of blockchain technology. So in this specific section, I want to talk to you all about blockchain, and my objective is to give you a much better vision and foundational background of this technology called blockchain. I will do that by beginning to talk to you about how blockchain works, followed by the evolution of blockchain, so you understand exactly how blockchain has been evolving. What we know as blockchain today is not the same exact thing that we had when the white paper was published back in 2008. There have been different evolutions, and blockchain has been evolving and improving. I will then continue to talk to you about the introduction to what is known as the decentralized web. When the internet was originally created, it was designed to be able to let everybody communicate. It was actually a very decentralized field where people could just share. Over time, different organizations have built centralized entities and structures on top of the internet. As a result, what we have is that the web as we know it relies a lot on single points of failure and single centralized entities that control a lot of the traffic. A perfect example would be there have been some challenges recently in some people complaining that YouTube has taken down some videos because they go against their terms of service. Now, when you understand that YouTube is a private company, YouTube has the right to be able to take down information that's on the site. That being said, for someone that wishes to share their message, that means that if they are not able to fit the adhering terms of YouTube, they cannot use the YouTube platform. But if you have a decentralized web where you don't have that type of control, you cannot take down that content. What Bitcoin did and so totally revolutionized the entire concept of transferring money is that whenever you send money to someone else, you need the services of a third party, such as a bank, a credit card, or something like PayPal. That third party controls that transfer. And if that third party decides that you should not do that transfer, they can issue a stop payment or simply close your bank account. This is the power that banks and central entities have over money. In Bitcoin, Bitcoin does not ask for any permission for you to be able to get your own Bitcoin wallet or to send Bitcoin to anybody else. In Bitcoin, anybody can get a Bitcoin wallet and anybody can send Bitcoin to anybody else. Bitcoin will not reject you from doing these transfers. That is the difference between a decentralized money transfer system like Bitcoin and money as we know it nowadays. So continuing, let me talk to you about how blockchain works. So when you look at blockchain, the easiest way to look at blockchain is, let's assume that two people want to do a transfer of an asset of value. For them to be able to do that transfer, They need to agree on the terms, do a transaction. If I give you $5,000, you will give me such and such, right? You need to agree on those terms. And you also need to determine that once that transfer is completed, that it is final. Those are the two key things you need to determine. If I'm going to buy a house from you, you need to determine a price, and then I need to pay you X amount for the house in order for you to give me the title to the house. That is what a transfer of an asset of value involves. Okay? Now, in order to do that, instead of writing it out in individual ledgers, that is, the party on the left has a ledger where they record that transaction, and the party on the right has a ledger where they record the transaction as well, which could have errors. The party on the left could write that they received $10,000, while the party on the right could actually say that they sent $15,000. You see, there are errors, or could be subject to tampering. For example, the party on the left could say that they never received payment, or the party on the right said that they actually sent the payment and actually double paid. So there's many, many ways that people could change. There's tampering that could be involved when different parties have a different ledger. Then the question is, which one's right? Or one of them could get deleted. Or for example, a major system failure could cause it to be lost forever, right? These are challenges when you actually have separate ledgers. This is how the world currently handles money. Replace ledgers with banks and their own databases. The party on the left could be on bank A. That bank keeps record of a transaction. The party on the right has a database of their own, which keeps a bank account, and they have a record of the transactions. This is why when a party A sends money to party B, you have to wait for a check to clear, because the second bank has to update their records so that they reflect that a payment has been made. This is the issue that you have when you have banks. Banks serve the roles of those separate ledgers. So this is how the world right now works, and where there are many challenges with all these different ledgers and different records all around the world. Now, when we look at these, instead of having these two separate ledgers, which could have errors, be subject to tampering, get deleted, or be lost, what if you replace that with a single ledger? And that ledger was shared. So think about it. If you're actually doing a transaction with someone else, both of you agree in one single ledger, and you share that this is exactly what happened. Not only that, that ledger is distributed. That is, exact copies of that ledger are distributed all around the world. One of the benefits of being able to do that is that there is no single point of failure. And every one of those ledgers serves as a witness that a transaction actually happened. They all agree on the same. This is the vision that we're looking at. And all the information that's recorded in that single ledger that's shared and distributed is recorded in a permanent way, and it is recorded immutably. That is, once it's recorded, there is no way to change it. This, in a nutshell, is how blockchains work. So having said all that, one of the key things that I want to tell you about the blockchain vision is that this distributed ledger technology, which is also how blockchain is usually called, enables you to have not multiple different ledgers that different people have, which are subject to discrepancies between them. This is one of the main problems right now that are going when people go and they might change their records, and they might say that a transaction took place or didn't take place, or someone might go after the fact, change that something happened in a previous era. In blockchain, that can't be done, because every single record that's recorded on the ledger is recorded in a permanent matter and immutable. So if something happened at a certain time in history, you cannot go back at a future date and change that information. This is one of the main powers of blockchain technology. So let me continue talking about this by giving you some of the initial concepts and steps of how we came to where we are today. The whole concept of blockchain began with an initial document which was posted in 1991, which is digital. It was digital timestamping of an electronic document. This document was written in 1991, and the vision was, how could you record digital documents, have them timestamped, very similar to notarizing them, so that nobody could change them again. This vision involved having also a distributed ledger. The whole concept was if you took a document and you actually notarized it and timestamped it, and then you created multiple copies of that same exact timestamped document in a distributed fashion, you don't have a single point of failure. This was the initial concept of what eventually became blockchain. So when we talk about blockchain being applied in 2008 within the vision of Bitcoin, genesis and idea for the technology that's being used in Bitcoin initiated in 1991. But back then, it didn't involve blocks, and it didn't involve this collection of assembled blocks that create that chain of blocks that Satoshi Nakamoto spoke about. The information that was recorded in these digital timestamp documents, as described in 1981, was also permanent and immutable. As we go through this concept of blockchain technology, I want you to understand the importance of having permanent and immutable data. In today's world, when we realize the crisis that happened in 2008, the financial crisis, a lot of it stemmed from people actually had been altering records of who owned what properties. And a lot of that information was actually tampered for malicious purposes. With blockchain technology, that would be impossible to do. And this is why there's such a big focus to move blockchain technology in so many different areas. One of the main areas where it's being used right now is electronic voting. You may have heard about having voter fraud. Well, if you turn a vote into a digital token, which is very similar to having a Bitcoin, and you cast your vote, it's very similar to spending a Bitcoin. You no longer own that Bitcoin. In the case of voting, you no longer own that vote. And because you have a permanent and immutable record of every single vote that has been cast, this is why blockchain is such a perfect solution for the whole concept of voting. It is currently being applied in electronic voting. Estonia has been implementing digital voting since 2003. And to this specific moment, they're already implementing blockchain technology in their electronic voting. So let me explain to you how these blockchains work by assembling these blocks. So within a blockchain, all the information is assembled into blocks. These blocks contain data. In the case of Bitcoin, that data consists of transactions which involve who had the Bitcoins sent to who and the amount. This is what a Bitcoin transaction involves. From who to who. Now, mind you, I am simplifying the concept of from meaning someone to meaning someone else. But in fact, in Bitcoin, it is actually being done in Bitcoin addresses. A Bitcoin address is not tied to anybody's name, but it is your identity inside the Bitcoin network. So if I have a digital wallet in Bitcoin and I create a Bitcoin transaction, my Bitcoin wallet will create a Bitcoin address, and that Bitcoin address will send to another Bitcoin address. So that's what I'm telling you about from to. That's what you've got inside Bitcoin transactions. So all of these Bitcoin transactions form data. This data is assembled inside blocks. Now, once that data is assembled inside a block, it is given what is known as a hash. A hash serves as a digital fingerprint of the contents of that block. So in the context of a block hash, what you are seeing here is an alphanumeric fixed sized length string that corresponds to the information inside a block. If anybody were to change anything inside that block, it would automatically change the hash for that block. That's because that digital fingerprint is exclusively created for that specific set of data inside that block. This is one of the key, most important functionalities that blockchain technology uses. It's called hash cryptography. And this hash cryptography is what preserves the integrity of all the information that's recorded inside blockchain. So once this information actually has a hash, that hash includes the hash of the previous block. You see how we're assembling a chain of blocks? Because when I create the block hash for the most recent block, we're also including the hash of the previous block. And that chain keeps going further and further with every single block that gets added on the Bitcoin blockchain is linked to the hash of the previous block all the way back to the first block ever in Bitcoin, which is known as the Genesis block. That Genesis block actually took place on January 3rd, 2009. And to this specific day, every single block that gets added to the Bitcoin blockchain includes a hash. And that hash is linked to the previous hash. And that hash is linked to the previous hash, and so on and so forth. And if anybody were to make a change anywhere on the Bitcoin blockchain, it would change the most recent hash because it would no longer correspond to all the data that it includes. This is one of the beauties of blockchain technology. To give you a better example, I want to take you right now to what's known as a block explorer. A block explorer is a technology that actually enables you to look at every single one of the records that are taking place on the Bitcoin blockchain. Notice that while we were here, all the transactions were still going through. In fact, what you see here is that the latest block, which is block number 631,204, included 2,699 transactions. When we go to the Block Explorer, what you will find is that that block took place 3 minutes ago. And here's that block. The previous block was 631,203, then 631,202. And you can continue this entire chain all the way back to block 0, which is the Bitcoin Genesis block. And that's the power of Bitcoin. In a blockchain, and this is one of the powers of Bitcoin thanks to blockchain, in a blockchain, every single transaction ever recorded on the blockchain is tied to the previous block, all the way to the beginning. And if anybody changes anything within that blockchain, it is immediately obvious that somebody tampered with it. So let me give you an example. If I go to the latest block, you will find that this block, and what I am seeing right now is something that anybody can do. This is called a block explorer, and it shows how all the data that's actually inside the Bitcoin blockchain is public and anybody could see it. So viewing a block explorer enables you to see every single block. This most recent block included 2,699 transactions and has its own block hash. If you'll notice, it has the hash for the previous block. Notice that the previous block ends in 9D7B. Let's go back and go to that previous block. And what you'll find is that this one says 9D7B. Why? Because this is the previous block. You see, in this case, this is the block hash for block 631,203. But the most recent block is a totally different hash, which includes the hash for the previous block, which would have been 631,203. And so on and so forth. You can just keep going back the chain. And if you wanted to just waste time, you could go all the way back to block number 0. So the key lesson I want to point out to you is that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Bitcoin is doing peer-to-peer transactions, changing back and forth Bitcoin value all around the world from multiple people all around the world. So this, in context, is what Bitcoin is all about. So now that I've got you here, I want to take you to the evolution of blockchain. When we talk about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the first generation of blockchain. It actually was born in 2008 with the white paper, and the Genesis block, which was the first block ever, was on January 3rd, 2009. But that was just a first generation blockchain. The next generation came with a Genesis block in 2015 on July 30th. The white paper was written in 2013, and it's called Ethereum. Now, Ethereum uses blockchain technology, but doesn't focus exclusively on transferring money. In Ethereum, the focus is something known as smart contracts. And much of the functionality we're talking about, whether it's electronic voting, whether it's actually dealing with supply chains, when you're dealing with managing health records, involves these smart contracts. And Ethereum was the first blockchain specifically designed to run smart contracts. This is what would be known as the second generation of blockchain. The third generation of blockchain involves many other ones. As we go further, I'm going to take you on a cryptocurrency field trip, and you'll be able to see many different cryptocurrencies as we go through it. moving forward, now that we've established that there are all these different iterations, these three generations of blockchain, I want to talk to you about the decentralized web. Now, when we really look at the history of the internet, we have to think of it in different stages. In Web 1.0, Web 2.0, and Web 3.0, there were marked differences between them. Web 1.0 is the internet that was from the early 90s. This is what was involved in the dot-com boom. It was the first generation. The focus was sharing information. The focus back then was primarily how do you share information and developing this passive viewing of information that was out there. This was the first generation. We're talking early 1990s. Whether it would be sharing a file of music or a photo, it was all about sharing information. This was Web 1.0. From there, we moved into Web 2.0, and this involved the early 2000s. That's when we started getting very actively involved in people interacting, communicating, collaborating. The big focus has been building applications, and much of it is actually centralized around big platforms. That's why we have the Facebooks of the world. That's why we have the Twitters of the world. This whole thing revolves around centralized entities that control this Web 2.0 that is out there. As we bring blockchain into the equation, and with the advent of Bitcoin, the focus of actually moving to a more decentralized approach is where we are moving now. And this is where Web 3.0 takes us. Our goal will be to be globally distributed, having what are known as distributed applications, or DApps or dApps. What you're able to do with that is that there is no single point of failure or centralized control, and you're no longer dependent on web platforms and data centers of Web 2.0. There's a lot of focus right now with the coronavirus pandemic over many people that are feeling that some of their messages are actually being controlled by these big established players. But going beyond that, if any of these players goes under and gets disconnected, all of a sudden people have no way of communicating. So the key point I want to state out is that being able to have more decentralized and distributed access to the web becomes very important when you really want to focus on mission critical things. Because imagine if you're dealing with an emergency situation where you need to communicate with others, and all of a sudden the platform that enables you to communicate is offline, a lot of people will be in a very tough situation. So it is in the best interest of society as a whole to be able to move more towards this Web 3.0 globally distributed structure for the internet. At this moment, I want to answer any questions that may be coming in from the crowd. I just received a question here that was actually specifically telling me if people are so focused on decentralized entities, why do they still use companies such as Facebook? That's a great question. The big thing that happens with companies such as Facebook and Twitter is first mover advantage. If you create a decentralized platform at this precise moment and nobody is using it, you're facing the challenge that there's really no one to communicate with. By having this first mover advantage and having established Facebook as such an established massive entity with at this moment close to 2 billion people which use Facebook globally, you already have full control of the communication channel. In fact, Facebook in many ways, for many people, is a primary means of communication between people on a global basis. This is a very powerful position for Facebook to be in. However, competitors are coming out trying to find decentralized approaches to these using blockchain technology. One of the key points I want to point out to you is that right now Facebook has been stepping beyond merely being a communication platform and has gotten into the world of e-commerce, getting to the point of launching it's in the plans of launching its own cryptocurrency. By offering its own cryptocurrency, they could eliminate the need for people to use banks, whether it's central banks for countries or even banks like JP Morgan Chase and Citibank and any of the other banks. Facebook could become the primary financial institution globally. And this is the type of thing that many decentralized entrepreneurs are trying to establish in order to be able to keep people have an alternative to merely having to rely fully on using Facebook or Twitter or any of the other platforms. So these are all key areas. That was an excellent question that you posted out. So going back to what we are seeing in the evolution of blockchain, The evolution of blockchain also ties in into creating a new version of what the internet will be for everybody. When we became the internet back in the early 1990s, the World Wide Web did not contemplate that it would become so important in all of our lives. Along the way, what we found is that when people were able to share any type of information, many businesses were completely disrupted. You've got businesses such as Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a video rental store, multi-billion dollar company, and people could just rent video cassettes. Well, when streaming came on board and companies like Netflix started implementing streaming, Blockbuster was completely disrupted and eliminated. Same thing happened to other companies such as Wikipedia. Wikipedia took over Encyclopedia Britannica and eliminated the need for people to have printed encyclopedias. This complete disruption due to the internet and the power of all this sharing has created has brought us to the point that unless we're able to control value as it is transmitted on top of the internet, it will be unsustainable. And this is where we are going with Web 3.0. Thank you for the great question. As we're going to kick off into the section on cryptocurrency, I want to talk specifically about Bitcoin first, but in this section, we're going to go well beyond merely Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the first decentralized cryptocurrency. As you will learn, there are currently over 5,000 different types of cryptocurrencies, and many cryptocurrencies are used for many different purposes. In this section, we will be focusing and expanding beyond cryptocurrency. I began this section by asking how many people actually had any cryptocurrencies and how many did you have? From the looks of it, 50% didn't have any cryptocurrencies, but there was somebody with one, and one actually had 4 to 10. When I began teaching these courses, my main question always used to be, who here has heard about Bitcoin? And at the time when we began teaching courses, it was very, very few people who actually knew what Bitcoin was. That has changed. Bitcoin has become a very common knowledge thing. More people are involved in Bitcoin. So I began asking who had Bitcoin. What I learned was that many people were not merely satisfied with just buying Bitcoin. And I've met people in some of the courses that have 30 and more different types of cryptocurrencies. And as you're going to see here, there's a wide variety of them. But as we go through this section, I want to give you the big picture about cryptocurrencies because Bitcoin is only one type of cryptocurrency. Let's first begin with a definition of what a cryptocurrency is. Cryptocurrency is a type of digital asset which can be used to exchange value between parties. It uses cryptography to secure how it is transferred and to control the creation of new units of that currency. It's a very important thing for you to understand this definition because first and foremost, the crypto in cryptocurrency is cryptography. Cryptography is a technology that's used to prevent third-party adversaries from actually tampering with a communication. It's how you're able to protect your accounts by having a password. That password is cryptography focused. So in cryptocurrency, the use of cryptography not only controls how cryptocurrencies are transferred, but it also controls the creation of new units of that currency. When we go beyond that, cryptocurrencies can be used to buy products, pay for services, and exchange value electronically. In a very similar fashion to dollars, euros, and yen, you can actually go to a store and you can pay for products using Bitcoin, or you can actually pay a consultant for their services in Ether. You can use cryptocurrencies to pay for products and services. Very, very similar to using dollars, euros, and yen. However, unlike these traditional currencies, cryptocurrencies do not have physical bills or coins. There is no such thing as a Bitcoin physical coin. One key thing that you need to understand is that for a while, especially during the early days, and it peaked in 2017, people were actually taking fake gold Bitcoins and selling them and trying to sell them at the full price of what a Bitcoin was going. That's because people did not understand that there is no such thing as a physical Bitcoin. So it's very important that unlike traditional currencies, cryptocurrencies do not have physical bills or coins. They are merely data. They are a digital asset that has value, and you can use it to buy products and services or exchange value. So I want to talk to you about the evolution of cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency began with the first and best known one, which is Bitcoin. Bitcoin, as we saw, was launched in 2009. It is the best known decentralized cryptocurrency. And that's important for you to understand because cryptocurrency has evolved. And right now, there are centralized cryptocurrencies being developed. In fact, banks such as JP Morgan Chase have rolled out their very own cryptocurrency, which is fully regulated and controlled by JP Morgan Chase. Facebook is in the process of rolling out Libra, which is a cryptocurrency that will be managed by a group called the Libra Association. But that Libra Association is a nonprofit which is run by multiple companies that have contributed into it. So when you really think of the definition of decentralized, in that context, you have a cryptocurrency that's controlled by an association, and they try to define that as being decentralized. Now, if the association decides to change the rules, they can. In the context of Bitcoin, there is no CEO of Bitcoin. There is no master merchant on top of Bitcoin that would say, you don't have any more Bitcoins. I can cancel your transaction. I can prevent these people from participating. Bitcoin is truly decentralized. So the first and best known cryptocurrency, and by far the one with the highest market value is market capitalization, is Bitcoin, which was launched in 2009. Since then, there have been thousands of other cryptocurrencies created, and these collectively are known as the cryptocurrency market. We'll be knowing more about these. When you heard that one of the people in the early poll had 4 to 10 different cryptocurrencies, that's because they took advantage of the fact that there's more than one type of cryptocurrency, and they've bought and collected different types of cryptocurrencies for different purposes. I spoke to you about Ethereum and I spoke to you about Bitcoin, but as I mentioned, there are thousands of these. Now, some popular options include Litecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, Ripple, and other alternatives to Bitcoin, which are normally known as altcoins. So when you hear the term altcoin, what you're looking at is an alternative to Bitcoin. So when you think of a market that has 5,000 different types of cryptocurrencies, there's one Bitcoin, and everything other than Bitcoin is considered an altcoin. Now, from the ones that I presented for you here, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, Ripple is actually a centralized cryptocurrency because it's controlled by a company named Ripple. Now, Ripple is a cryptocurrency that's being used extensively by banks. It's actually used to power different types of money transfer services. For example, Banco Santander has a platform called OnePayFX, which uses Ripple technology to do same day international money transfers. And this is something that was completely unheard of prior to this technology. Money transfers globally typically take between 24 hours to up to 5 and 7 days, depending on which countries you're going to. With the use of this OnePayFX technology, which uses Ripple, Banco Santander is able to do same-day money transfers using blockchain technology. So I want to take you to the cryptocurrency market right now so you get a good feel of what cryptocurrencies are all about. This site is called coinmarketcap.com. It's one of the most popular sites that you're going to find when it comes to cryptocurrencies. And if you're involved in the cryptocurrency market, you definitely want to become familiar with coinmarketcap.com. CoinMarketCap.com tracks the entire cryptocurrency market. What you will find here is that the cryptocurrency market currently on the site has 5,500 cryptocurrencies. I mentioned to you Bitcoin is just one cryptocurrency, and it has the largest market cap whatsoever. Over $165 billion worth of Bitcoin are currently out in the market. Now, when you look at the type of information that's tracked on coinmarketcap.com, what you will find is that in the last 24 hours, over $120 billion worth of cryptocurrencies have exchanged hands. Of that, 36 billion have actually been Bitcoin. You can also see that the entire market capitalization is $248 billion, of which 66% is Bitcoin. What I want to point out to you is how important Bitcoin is. Because even though there are 5,500 cryptocurrencies, 66% of that market is actually Bitcoin. The rest of the other cryptocurrencies take up the rest, all 5,499 of them. Now, the interesting thing that you need to understand is that this is as of today, which in May 21st, 2020, means that Bitcoin is worth 66% of that market. But when the cryptocurrency market began, Bitcoin was 100%. Understand that this market has been evolving. And yes, Bitcoin still holds a very large portion. As different prices swing, this percentage also shifts. So while I'm here, I want to take advantage to actually show you something very important about cryptocurrencies. In the case of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is what's known as a cryptocurrency coin. A coin is a cryptocurrency that has its own blockchain. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Bitcoin Cash, all of these are actually cryptocurrency coins because they have their own blockchain. There's a different type of cryptocurrency called a token. A token is a cryptocurrency that is built on top of another blockchain. So as you will see, all of these are cryptocurrencies that are built on top of the Ethereum blockchain. And there are other blockchains on which people are able to build. For example, this token is actually built on top of the Bitcoin platform using a technology called RSK. And there are multiple other ones. You see Neo here, you see Binance Coin. So there are different blockchains. But of them all, the biggest platform for building smart contracts and developing these coins is actually Ethereum. I'm going to go back now to the actual presentation to continue with all of the exposure on where we're going with cryptocurrencies. While I have you here, I want to talk to you about some important moments in the history of Bitcoin. The first one is what is known as the Genesis block. Now, I spoke to you about the importance of these hashes. In Bitcoin, every single block and every single transaction has a corresponding hash. This is the block hash for the Genesis block. What that means is that this moment in time is captured forever inside that one hash, and you can view it on a block explorer. So right now, what we are seeing is taking a moment back to January 3rd, 2009, when the first Bitcoin block was ever created, the Genesis block. This block was created on January 3rd, 2009. And just like every single block from there, you can continue all the way up to the most recent block, which is actually, as we last checked, was over 603,000. Let me go back to the most recent one. So you can follow the chain all the way to the most recent block and go all the way back to block 0, which is that Genesis block. So I'll take you back to some more important moments. The first peer-to-peer transaction that ever took place on Bitcoin was actually on January 11th, 2009. And this transaction was between Satoshi Nakamoto and a man named Hal Finney. Now, we don't have the names of Satoshi Nakamoto and Hal Finney, but we know that this is Satoshi Nakamoto because he created that block and he publicly stated that he created this specific block, which included this Bitcoin address. Now, when he sent 10 Bitcoins to this address, Hal Finney publicly stated that he had received 10 Bitcoins from Satoshi Nakamoto. So now we know forever that this transaction, which took place on January 11th, 2009, was between Satoshi Nakamoto and Hal Finney. Now, this is a very important point that I want to point out to you because many people think that Bitcoin is anonymous. And this is a perfect example of how Bitcoin cannot be anonymous. Because as of this moment, I know that any single transaction that ever took place from this specific Bitcoin address is from Satoshi Nakamoto because I know that that's his Bitcoin address. So if I take that Bitcoin address and I can actually go to a different provider, bitref.org, bitref.com, I can enter any Bitcoin address and I can see all the transactions that have happened with that Bitcoin address. So as it currently stands, that Bitcoin address from Satoshi Nakamoto still has 18.43765,933 Bitcoins from all of these transactions that have previously been sent to them. So the key point I want to get out of this lesson for you is that Bitcoin, although you do not have to give your name, every single transaction is permanently and immutably recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain. Another key point I want to point out to you is one specific transaction that took place on May 22nd, 2010. And this is a very important transaction in the world of Bitcoin because it was the first ever retail purchase using Bitcoin. And it actually consisted of buying 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins. This is the transaction. This transaction took place on May 22nd, 2010. And Laszlo Hanyecz, who's the man that actually made the purchase, sent 10,000 Bitcoins to one specific man who actually gave him 2 Bitcoins. His name is actually, his nickname is Jerkos. Jerkos sold 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins. At the current price point, we're looking at 10,000 Bitcoins at $9,000 plus each one of them. So we're talking millions and millions of dollars. But at the time, it was only $25 because Bitcoin didn't have any price. This transaction set the price for Bitcoin in the entire history of Bitcoin. So for those 10,000 Bitcoins, receiving 2 pizzas worth of Bitcoins, that was actually an equivalent of four Bitcoins for every 1 penny worth of pizza. That was the initial price of Bitcoin. And today, that same exact Bitcoin still exists, and it's worth over $9,000 as of this precise moment. So you see the history of how it moves. Every single year in the world of Bitcoin, we celebrate May 22nd Pizza Day, which is that purchase of 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins. So as we go through this point, I want to actually answer a question that I also received about Bitcoins, where we were talking about the price of Bitcoin being so volatile. I want to take you again to not only first all the transactions. Oh, we have a brand new block. We are at block 631,208. Notice the last time that we have been looking at the Explorer, we had been at block 631,204. Bitcoin has been rolling and moving block after block after block after block. This is happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is a very big difference to what happens with banks. Banks close on the weekends. Stock market closes on, for holiday hours. They close for specific celebrations. The Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market does not. It works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So let me take you specifically. If I go to coinmarketcap.com and I want to take you one final point into Bitcoin, we see that the price is $9,000. That price has dropped 5% in the last 24 hours. But what we will find is that that price of $9,000.73 is actually just an average across multiple different exchanges all around the world. You see, the price of Bitcoin is not $9,000.73. This is just an average across many different exchanges where Bitcoin is being traded. In some places, it actually is trading right now at less than $9,000. In other places, it's trading at $9,064. It just depends on where you're buying and selling. And that is one of the volatility aspects of Bitcoin. There is not one single price. Like, for example, $1 will always be worth $1. But a Bitcoin is worth whatever the market determines it to be. Okay? So as we go through this thing, I want to take you to one final transaction that I want to talk to you about, which is where everything began. This transaction actually took place on January 3rd, 2009, and that is the first transaction ever on the Genesis block, which has a hidden message inside. In the message, Satoshi Nakamoto stated, "The Times 03 January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." This was a message from Satoshi Nakamoto stating that Bitcoin presented an alternative to banks, because at the time, banks were getting bailouts while the rest of the markets were not getting any help from the governments. And Bitcoin was presented, many people state, as a bank killer. So when we look at the evolution of blockchain and Bitcoin, what banks have been doing is evolving and adapting and rolling out their own cryptocurrencies and using blockchain technology as a defense mechanism to be able to prevent being disrupted by this new technology. This is very different from what happened with the music industry, which when MP3s came about, the music industry decided that they wanted to destroy MP3s and shut Napster down. But the genie was out of the bottle already. People already knew about MP3s, and as a result, the music industry really suffered dramatically. It wasn't until the music industry adapted and started using streaming and using the internet to its advantage that it has begun to come back. So banks have already learned about this, and what began on January 3rd, 2009 with the first transaction on Bitcoin has now evolved into all the new efforts from banks to be able to use blockchain technology. So as we continue with the course, I want to actually first thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. If there are any final questions which you may wish to ask, this is a good time to bring them up.